to officially call the regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting of November 8th to order, and let the record reflect that we're all here except for Commissioner Ludden at this point. And we'd start out with Commissioner Carter. If you'd lead us in the pledge, please stand.
Please stand, Johnny. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and start off with public comments. Do we have any?
We do not have any.
Then we won't start off with that. How about any presentation items?
Our first presentation item this evening for the third quarter, and Darrell Hill is here this evening with that report.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, fellow commissioners. Ordinarily, I just go right into giving you the numbers, but I want to take a moment and introduce to you one of our newest members of our team. Her name is Afrouz Rashidian. You want to stand up, please? Thank you. And she will be, she's our management analyst for code enforcement now, and she'll be sitting here and delivering the quarterly reports for you in the future, and we'll be switching off. So,
thank you and welcome.
okay, so
Hang on one second. Let the record reflect that Commissioner Ludden has arrived at whatever time it is, 7:02. A lot of traffic. Thanks.
Okay, so second quarter activity report for 2018. We had 45 cases carried over from the past. We added 143 new cases, and we closed 104, leaving currently open 73. And so I am for any comments or any questions that you.
And just, again, I kind of ask this all the time, out of the ones, generally the ones you get are as far as complaints that people call in or whatever, or how many would you say are observations that you guys might make? Just, is there a percentage, generally speaking?
As a general rule, we are complaint driven, but as our policy states, if we see something, and as far as this is residential, if we see something across the street or next door or in very close proximity to an existing violation, we can open up a case on that one as ourselves. Commercially speaking, we can, anytime we see something, we will open up a case. But as a rule, I'm saying probably 90%.
Great.
You bet.
Okay, our second presentation, quarterly report, and Doug Urban is here with that report.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. The Public Works Department's quarterly report for the third quarter of calendar year 2018 is included in your package. I'd like to bring your attention to a few capital improvement projects that are upcoming or are currently under construction. Veterans Park is currently quickly wrapping up. While the project has encountered some challenges during construction, the final landscaping and punch list items are being completed, with the park opening scheduled for November 20th. Portola Park, while Lancy, the developer, ran into delays delivering the Portola Park site to the city, the site was finished for turnover in September. Staff anticipates advertising for the project in January, with award of construction in early 2019. The staff is also currently advertising for the construction of new park shade structures at El Toro, Kavanaugh, and Etnies Parks, with construction also scheduled in early 19. Construction for Slurry Seal Zone B is scheduled to begin in December. This area includes the non-arterial public streets generally south of Ridge Route between the. This concludes. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
I got one for you. On the raised median projects that are noted, are those the areas where they have the yellow sticks that are? Oh, those are the locations where those.
In one of those locations down by Rockfield at Gateway Center, that is one of the areas we're looking at.
And on Lake Forest, there's also a series of those at directly north as you turn north off of Lake Forest onto Trabuco. I'm wondering if it's right there by the shopping center, same thing, where we've got the yellow sticks.
I need to double check, but I'm not sure
I'm
if
just
that's
curious
the
if
location for
those
it. But I
are-
know looking at.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to the consent calendar. So that's the minutes from October 11th, and so we'll be looking for a motion on that one.
Move consent.
Second.
Let's vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, so that takes us to our public hearing items this evening. We have a few. The first item is the plan sign program for signage at an existing self-serve drive-through car wash. I believe Jennifer, thank you, Jennifer Mansour has a report on this one.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. This item is a planned sign program for signage at a drive-through Circle K car wash located on the corner of Portola and Town Center. The previous mobile gas station converted to a Circle K and updated their branding and signage throughout the site. As part of the rebranding, directional signs for the drive-through car wash were installed without any city approvals. In April of this year, code enforcement sent a notice of violation to the owner of the station regarding the unpermitted signage. In response to the notice of violation, the applicant submitted this planned sign program. The project includes legalizing the existing unpermitted car wash directional signs, removal of one of the existing freestanding signs, and the addition of one new freestanding sign. The city's code does not have specific standards for drive-through signage. Rather, it requires review through a planned sign program. The planned sign program allows flexibility in the size and number of signs on a case-by-case basis. The Circle Site K has a unique shape. The drive-through car wash is not readily visible from the streets and is not centrally located on the site. Based on the location of the car wash, it is reasonable that the 4 directional signs are necessary to direct customers to the car wash. The number and size of the signs are not excessive and are well placed to lead customers to the drive-through entrance. The project is subject to approval from the Foothill Ranch Business Association and received approval in June of this year. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution approving the planned sign program, which as conditioned will remedy the current code enforcement violations at the site. The applicant is in the audience. I'd be happy to on this project. Thank you.
Kind of going back to what I was asking Daryl there, that was a code brought this up initially, or how does that work?
That was actually brought to my attention by the planners, by Jennifer.
Okay. And then they're essentially issued a warning to comply.
Actually, no. I issued letters to the corporate office, and they were largely ignored. Not largely, they were ignored. So I finally ended up having to issue citations, a $0 citation to the corporate and a $0 citation to the manager. And nothing really happened with that. And then when that period ran out, I issued a $100 citation and then ended up issuing a $200 citation. Finally, we got some feedback, and I stopped at that point.
Great, thanks.
Did you get your $200?
I don't believe that was paid as of yet, but I can't guarantee that.
Questions of staff, anybody? Okay, any speakers on this?
Seren Anache.
Seren Inake and Park.
Just if we have any questions.
You guys, please feel free to ask and drill me and kill me if you guys want.
So now, at this point, as far as you're concerned, you're all in compliance and everything's
And
taken
the
care of
reason
as far
for
as that goes?
I just want to explain myself. The reason for the illegal signage, it wasn't Promotion Plus that did that. It was Circle K, which the permits were with the Portola Ranch.
Foothill Ranch
Yeah.
Business Association.
Starting January this year, and it took 6 months for them to even go through I think every month they have a meeting. So we submitted all those plans, and they finally got approved in June. So throughout the process, we already had the plans in. So this, I guess Circle K decided to just put up the signs. But, so that's...
Yeah, I was reading the report, and I was struck by the fact that the permits expired because no request for inspection was done. Don't we have a follow-up where we, if we have a permit that's due to expire, that we contact them to let them know that we haven't received a request for inspection? It just seems sort of like something got missed. And if they're not responding, that is one thing. But I'm just curious as to whether or not we contact those that we know that there's a permit that is going to expire.
Mr. Carter, we could, I'll look into that for you. We've been running with 5 building inspectors and an average of 27 inspections per inspector per day. So given our workload, it would be, we don't have an automated system that kicks those out to us. So it's more a finding time for people to hand sort through and notify people.
Yeah, you answered my question, because if you don't have an automated system, there'd be no way to know that it's coming up. That I'm surprised that we don't. It might be something for us to consider to have the city look into. What?
Well, she just said their staff is kind of burdened right now, but I just wanted to say thank you for coming, and you're not in trouble.
Yes.
Okay, good.
You're not in trouble. No.
All right,
No.
sounds...
I'm trying to think, this could have been avoided if there had been a follow-up thing for a process, that if a permit was had been issued, was about to expire, but no follow-up was done. I mean,
Gotcha.
there should just be a follow-through on that, in my opinion. But thank you for bringing it
you're
into
welcome.
compliance.
This may be a question for staff. The signage that would have raised your attention?
No, it was only the signage, and I think it was when they went from mobile to Circle K, so everything was related to that.
Okay, so they didn't change anything else on the site that would have altered?
I was aware of.
Okay, thank you.
We got a motion to...
Bring it up here.
Let's bring it up here. Anybody have anything?
You don't have to have a motion to bring it up.
Okay. Close
Bring it
the
up
public
here.
hearing.
I'll make the motion to close the public hearing and bring it up here and approve staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
Let's vote.
Motion
See,
carries
you weren't in
unanimously.
trouble. You were not in trouble at all.
Okay, item 5 is a use permit to allow beer and wine sales for off-site consumption at a soon-to-be-established grocery store of convenience or necessity. And Ron Santos has the staff report this evening.
Good evening, Chair Armando and members of the Planning Commission. As Gail mentioned, this is a use permit request to establish beer and wine sales for off-site consumption at a Sprouts Farmers Market store. The new Sprouts store will be located in what is currently a vacant tenant space in the Hunter Court Shopping Center. In addition, the applicant is requesting a determination of public convenience or necessity as required by the California Business and Professions Code in census tracts with an undue concentration of alcohol licenses. The total proposed beer and wine display area is 192 square feet, which comprises 0.64% of the future store. Beer and wine would be displayed on shelves and in a refrigerated cabinet near the southwest corner of the store. No hard alcohol would be sold and no alcoholic beverages would be consumed on site. As part of the application, the applicant identified security provisions which are either already in place or proposed with the use. Are already in place meaning standard Sprouts security features, including security cameras installed throughout the premises and employee training pertaining to the sale of alcohol. Pursuant to the city's policy, the application was reviewed by the Chief of Police Services, who prepared a report for Planning Commission consideration. Among other things, the report indicates that alcohol violations of law represented 1.6% of the crimes in the corresponding census tract. in calendar year 2017. That figure is lower than the percentage of crimes that are alcohol violations of law citywide, which is 3.7%. Additionally, the report indicates that the census tract generated 6 calls for service directly linked to alcohol at similar businesses in 2017. The report concluded that the use is not expected to result in nuisance activities, detrimental conditions, or a need to augment police services. Pertinent factors outlined in the staff report include that the business is a full-service grocery store, which many customers use for one-stop shopping, and that as a result, the addition of beer and wine sales would provide a certain level of convenience for Sprouts customers. Staff is recommending approval of the use permit and the PCN determination based on the application consistency with the city's guidelines and the findings included in the draft resolutions. We do have one minor change to a recommended condition of approval, which is that condition number 12, as recommended by staff, should limit the alcohol display area to 2% of the gross floor area rather than 1%. Although the applicant is proposing only 0.6% of the floor area, the 2% will give the store more flexibility for minor expansions of the display area in the future, should that be desired. To date, no public comments have been received regarding this item. That concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
And any speakers?
Mark McManus?
Yes, I'm Mark McManus. My estimate put Terry Dickerhoff's residence in Los Angeles instead, because I'm here on her behalf since she was caught in a flight delay. So, good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Thank you for your time, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have and to let you know that we look forward to coming to Lake Forest.
So I just have a question on the, was it, you said 0.6% is what they're suggesting that they start with, and you bumped it up to 2%. Was that based on the applicant's request, or just again and said, oh, we should do 2%?
No, there was a sort of discrepancy in the terms where the applicant had identified their display areas with just over 1% of the retail area, and so that figure, the 2%, ended up in the police report, and the figure that the staff was using was the percentage of the entire store. And so just trying to reconcile the two, the applicant and staff had a conversation, and I think we were in agreement to provide flexibility.
Great. I think it's exciting that Sprouts is.
Oh, I think too.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I've worked on a couple of projects in this area, and it would be nice to have it's near here.
Thank you for that comment, because I was going to make a comment that I'm glad to see we have another grocery store going in that particular area. That's something that's lacking down in that part of the community. So I'm glad that you're bringing that forward. I really am. Thank you.
So regarding Sprout stores in general, the selling of alcohol like we're trying for here, that's in all they have. It's not unique to Lake Forest as it is.
No, yeah. Sprouts has about 300 stores in 16 states, and it's typical. Like, usually have that.
All right, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we just bring it up here? And
One of the things we've got to do is make the finding should be stated, and I think the finding number 1 is definitely met, so there's no problem with that whatsoever. And unless anybody's got any objections to it, I'd like to go ahead and make the motion to close the public hearing and accept staff's recommendation.
so you guys will take care of
including the addition
the
of
2% change.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
I'll second that.
Let's vote.
Carries unanimously.
Welcome.
Okay, moving on. Our next item is a site development permit for the exterior remodel of an existing 40,000-foot commercial space for Hoag Health. And Ron also has this staff report this evening.
Commissioners, this proposal is to remodel the exterior of an existing tenant space in the Foothill Ranch Town Center. You may remember the space as a former Joann's Fabrics store. Hoag Health Center will be the new tenant there and will operate a 44,000 plus square foot medical office and urgent care center. The remodel includes new storefront glass and secondary entries, changes to the roof line, including new clear-story windows above the main entrance, new paint, new light fixtures, and screened rooftop equipment. The project also includes minor site improvements along the exterior of the building, including new patio areas, a covered walkway, decorative paving, landscaping, benches, and potted plants. The remodel will provide for a slightly more contemporary look while maintaining architectural compatibility with other buildings in the center. As noted in the staff report, the project will maintain compliance with applicable development standards, including building height and parking standards. The project was approved by the Foothill Ranch Business Association this past July. Staff is recommending approval of the project as proposed and subject to the recommended conditions of approval. To date, we have not received any public comments on this application. This concludes staff's presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. And the applicant is also in attendance. Any questions of their team?
No, I don't know when I'm going to bring it up as a question. Seems interesting that we're putting a medical center into a shopping center, which is curious as to, because I've seen some things have changed in that center multiple times, so I'm just curious as, you know, the design for the center is under reconsideration as to what it's going to be. I like the addition of it. I do have one question, though, and I don't know whether now is the time to ask. In the rendering that we have, which is item, I think it's number 6, it doesn't show those enclosures they have for the air conditioning unit, and it's sort of a misleading conceptual design, because I'm curious whether those enclosures are going to be as visible as I think they're going to be on that particular building. That's my only concern, the visibility of those.
Commissioner, one thing to note in that regard is that the equipment is from the edge of the roof line. So it may be a matter of perspective with that rendering there, that you know, the angle that you're seeing it from
street.
Yeah, from the street level, that that you're not seeing that equipment, but they're not at the edge. They're set back on all sides of the building, the equipment enclosures.
So the equipment enclosures are essentially going to be in the middle of the building rather than through the front, so they're not part of the front facade. It almost looks in some of the renderings that it becomes a part of the front facade, and I would just raise that up as a, you know.
Yeah, it's a little bit of the trick of the elevation drawings, which are two-dimensional.
Right.
They would appear to be closer to the perimeter of the building rather than the...
Yeah. That question. But I personally am glad to see that some alternative uses are being proposed in that particular area, because we're doing the general plan conceptual things about what we're doing with some of the centers, and this seems to be an indication that this may be a transitional type thing.
Of course, now that we have Sprouts and all the good healthy food, I'm not sure we're going to need Hoag, but that remains to be seen.
We have a speaker on this?
Sanford Smith, followed by Ann Youngman.
Thanks. Again, if you just state your name and city of residence, that'd be great.
Yes, my name is Sanford Smith. I live in Irvine, California. I'm the Senior Vice President for Real Estate and Facilities at Hoag. And to speak to, the change of use, Hoag has been serving Orange County for about 5 years, and we have the 2 hospitals. We currently have 8 health centers, 2 of which are in retail shopping centers. And we've seen that as we shift from sickness to health care, having it become part of your community is really an important element for us, and that's really our intent in this location. Our network has about 1,500 physicians and about 5,500 staff, and this 44,000 square foot facility will be an important element for us in terms of serving the community of Lake Forest. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have. And
maybe you're not the one to ask the question to, but so we got to merge clinics, those kind of things. This is a little more than that. Would they have, like, you have a doctor and you visit a doctor's offices, or how does what basically is going to be happening at this facility?
The community health center has a variety of services, including primary care, internal medicine, so your doctor, pediatrics in this location. It will have urgent care as one of the components, or an alternative for most people in terms of going to an emergency room if it's a non-emergent case. It'll have sophisticated imaging equipment, so anything that you might need, laboratory services, and then some other health sort of related services that we're in the process of developing. Stop shop for your health needs.
Just out of curiosity, I'm not sure it's within this discussion, but how much vehicular traffic do you think will contribute to the parking? How many cars do you think a day will be parking there?
That's outside of my scope to answer.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
Do you expect a lot of people in and out of there? Or?
I think what we have found, this may not be to the point, but typically the parking standards that have been set aside for medical significantly overstate the demand. So we typically find that any type of retail use, it has more than adequate parking to accommodate our needs.
Very good.
Thank you.
That's all of our speakers?
But you mentioned one other one.
Good evening. My name is Arne Youngman. My handwriting is not too good, but we are the development partner of all of French retail, and so we are the landlord for the Hoag piece. And to kind of answer your question, yes, we've seen quite a transition in retail, and majority of the larger box tenants to downsize. Those that haven't have been eliminated from the competition. So we viewed Hoag as a fit for our shopping center, as rather than a detriment or somebody that's going to compete for parking and so on. With the existing CVS, the quick service restaurants, the new Planet Fitness, it was a complementary use compared to some other uses that may not have been quite as receptive to our tenants. So we are here just as a support. We're not an applicant of the Hoag project, and we're looking forward to having them for a very long time. And to answer your other question, not related to this, there are no other major transitions in our portion of the shopping centers. We hope that the current tenants will be there for a while. There'll always be small tenants moving in and out, and there'll be a few applicants coming through in the near future to take over some existing spaces to help liven the retail community.
Thank you. So we want to bring it up here, and all right. Anybody have anything?
Personally, I like it. I think it's a good use for the facility and in the area. Parking, I don't think is going to be a problem whatsoever. We got more parking out there than we definitely need. So I think it's a good acquisition in addition to the area. So I'm totally in favor of it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree. I think it's a real good use of that particular facility, and I think we need that type of thing up in that area. And I see more and more of the hospital groups doing more to take this type of thing out into the community rather than move it towards the hospitals. So I think that's a good thing. I think it will help reduce the cost of health care down the line. I'd make a motion to bring it back up here, close the public hearing, and approve the project as presented.
I think it's a good idea. I'll second it.
That's what,
Commissioner Damon? Motion carries unanimously.
welcome to Lake Forest.
Okay, so moving along, our next item is the plan sign program for tenant wall signage for the, and shopping center monument signage for the Foothill Marketplace Shopping Center. And Amanda Locke has the report this evening.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. The item before you tonight is a plan sign program for the Foothill Marketplace Shopping Center located across the street from the Foothill Ranch Town Center at the intersection of Portola Parkway and Bake Parkway. The subject shopping center does not currently have a plan sign program. In December 2017, the Planning and Traffic Commission approved amendments to the existing plan sign programs for the Foothill Ranch Town Center. These amendments provided for a new design for monument signs throughout the different phases of the shopping centers. The design of the 3 types of monument signs under this plan sign program would match the design of the approved signs in the Foothill Ranch Town Center. The plan sign program proposes regulations for tenant wall signage, as well as 2 shopping center monument signs, 6 secondary tenant monument signs, and a freestanding leasing sign. The municipal code allows for deviations from the regulations stated in the code with the approval of a plan sign program. As described in the staff report, the applicant has proposed deviations to the regulations for the size of certain tenant wall signs, as well as the number of freestanding secondary tenant monument signs. However, staff is recommending approval of the plan sign program as the monument signs are evenly spaced along the 1,100-foot Portola Parkway street frontage, and the increase in size for certain tenant wall signs will help balance the larger sign bands on architectural elements and will not create a cluttered appearance along the building elevations. The proposed plan sign program will create uniform regulations for tenants within the center and will allow for an upgrade to all of the center monument signs to help create a more uniform appearance throughout the retail areas in Foothill Ranch. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have, and the applicant is also in the audience. Thank you.
We're adding the lease sign in there. Now, is this going to preclude the other lease signs from being out there? What I like the idea of the lease sign because all these temporary, lease signs that are in our centers. Half of the posts have been chewed away because of they've been there for so long, the edgers and all of that have almost brought them down. But I'm curious as to whether this will be the only lease sign permitted on the property. Is that correct?
Yes, the leasing sign is currently out there right now, and it is uniform with the appearance throughout the Foothill Ranch area, so that would be the only leasing
So
sign.
if there another one shows up, it would be in violation, and that would be a code violation.
Yes.
Okay. I'll wait and comment on it. Thank you.
Speakers?
Hello. I am the property manager.
State your name and your...
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Julie Edmiston, and I live in Newport Beach. I am the property manager for the Foothill Marketplace Center and also the Foothill Ranch Town Center, and I am the person that oversaw the Town Center project, and we're just trying to accomplish the same thing at the Ralph Center, redoing the monument sign so everything looks really nice. And we're really excited about it. We've received a lot of positive feedback on the new. So, answer any questions.
Guess you're off the hook. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else?
That was it.
Great. Let's bring it up here then. Do you have something?
I'm always ready to jump in on an improvement comes through that's, it comes forward because the applicant wants to do the improvement instead of us being out there pounding on people to make improvements to something that, has been there forever. I appreciate, you're coming forward with a new face look on it, okay, that is what I think is encouraging to see. Okay, I like the signs. They're appropriate in size, in scale. It's a nice contemporary, or I guess that's what I call contemporary nowadays, I don't know. But they're very nice in appearance, and they're going to give a nice uniform look to the center. And I'd like to encourage all our other centers to occasionally go out and look at their signage they've got and come forward on their own volition and, request approval to upgrade instead of us out there trying to pound on them to upgrade something that needs to be. I am totally in favor of the lease monument sign. Absolutely. Like I say, most of our centers have got temporary lease signs, which are wooden in structure. The base of them have just been chewed to bits from the weed whackers and all of that, so they're no longer temporary signs. So I'm encouraged to see that there is one tenant sign for this particular center. I'm totally in favor.
Well, I will close the public hearing, make a motion to accept staff recommendation to approve this project.
I'll second.
Okay. Let's vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. And then we have one discussion item this evening, and it's the annual reporting of the Planning Commission to the City Council. And Nikki Wetzel is going to provide some insight on this item this evening.
Thank you. Chair Armando, members of the Commission, pursuant to a City Council policy, the Planning Commission in the fourth quarter of every year is to review its major accomplishments and also discuss any items that it would like guidance from the City Council on to better or more effectively discharge its duties. So believe it or not, it is the fourth quarter, and it is time to do that again. And whatever you discuss will be taken by Chair Armando to the City Council in a verbal presentation for the first quarter of next year. So this is your opportunity to discuss the items, and if you have any questions, we're happy to help.
I know that I gave the presentation last year. Unfortunately, I don't remember what I said. Is there anything that we asked for or that we presented that maybe dropped, didn't get picked up? Yeah. I guess I probably should have looked up.
Yeah, I'd have to go. We can bring that back.
Yeah, let's
because
do
we'll
that.
meet in December, and the chair won't be there. But it may have been related to the new duties of the
it might have been parking.
Parking and traffic.
Yeah.
And I think we wanted to have an ability to report more frequently instead of waiting till the end of the year. So we'll bring that information for you at the next meeting.
Yeah, because
but I
I'd
don't
like
have
to know that if you say something that it's listened to at least.
Sure.
Be responded to.
Yeah, the multiple reports were something that we requested that would not be limited to the annual report.
But now, do we really need that? Not really, huh?
It depends upon what kind of a year we're going to have.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, we're in process of doing the 10-year evaluation of blah, 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 blah. Okay, the general plan. I anticipate that's going to come to us sometime this year.
It may be a full year away. I mean, we just had the third meeting of the GPAC, and so we have I believe, 10 meetings of the GPAC scheduled, and then we have the environmental impact report. So we'll probably come forward with some kind of an update to the commission, but I don't think the full general plan will be before the commission in 12 months.
Well, I'd like to keep with what we've got. I think we actually got it to where we could provide a quarterly report, or we can submit requests for consideration for things. I think that's what we did. And I like to retain that, because you never know what's going to
We didn't get anything. We asked for it.
We asked for it.
I don't think we got it.
I don't know.
No, I don't think
You were
so.
there.
Well, they don't. They just look. They just look at you, and then they. And then they take your
They didn't say
picture,
no.
and then they take your picture, and no, they'd have to make some kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, then they file your report.
Yeah.
4 of them said thank you to me.
Well, is there anything we want to address in the next year that we can think that the community needs to look at?
So what we have listed here, those are the ones
Those we've
I'll
done.
present, and I'll say, give them that backup. So what we're going to talk about is there something we need to, this is one thing that I brought up that I don't know where it's at, the Hometown Heroes program, or whatever we want to call it, where they have they have the currently serving people in the military that are, Lake Forest residents, or they grew up in Lake Forest, or they have some sort of connection. And I've forwarded, information and from what some other city is doing on that. And when I get a chance, I'll talk to them, and they say, yeah, that's a great idea, and we're looking into it or whatever. So I think that, and especially with the Veterans Park that's opening on Ridge Route, there's no brackets on any of the streetlight poles, so we wouldn't have to compete with the Christmas and the 4th of July, banners. We could have those up all year and not have to take them down, and we could at least start on that, would be my suggestion. So I'd like to see that, us follow up on that too. So do you know?
Maybe if it's on the list for 4 or 5 years in a row, then it'll look. Yeah.
I think I've talked to Scott Wasserman. I think he has some of that information, but I don't know where they're at.
Now, I know Scott's staff has been looking into that, and I will give you a report next month as to what. But that was one of the items that we brought to the City Council. That's correct.
I got a question that's probably for Gail. We got into a conversation at the last planning session we had for the. You weren't there. Oh, that's right. I probably got myself in more trouble than I was supposed to, but there are certain things that I'd like to, that the state has precedence, and I know we probably should wait until we get done with what we're doing before we address some of them. But like, as an example, we got into a discussion about, we do not have an emergency plan adopted by the city. We use counties. Is that correct?
I think we could bring more information as well, but our service providers, the sheriffs and Orange County Fire Authority, have a number of plans in place if this were to happen in Lake Forest, if there was a fire. So there are a number of plans, and they do tell us how we will operate here in Lake Forest. It's not a plan that's adopted by the Lake Forest City Council, but they have situational plans prepared to handle any sort of series of disaster that could hit Lake Forest.
The way that it was presented in the report was we are using the Orange County's emergency plan of action right now. It's not a city plan of action, not specific for Lake Forest.
No, it is specific for Lake Forest. We have an emergency operations center. We have a number of roles that various staff members play. We have a series of manuals, and if there is an emergency, for example, and we need to activate an emergency shelter, it will list, here are the contacts, here are the shelters, here's their capacity, this is where you're going. If you need this, these are the resources that you asked for. So in management services, there's an employee that's in charge of all kinds of emergency planning. So we do have a whole series of situational plans. They're not adopted by the city. They're primarily fostered by our emergency responders. They tell us, but it is a specific plan for how to take care of an earthquake in Lake Forest. Where will our shelters be? how will we operate? So I think we do have, we just don't call it the Lake Forest Emergency Preparedness Plan.
It would be nice to have a Lake Forest emergency preparedness plan, specifically. Never mind. All right. Oh, good grief. The other thing was, and we got into a conversation, but I think we'll wait until after we bring it forward, is that identifying fire hazard, designated fire hazard zones. There are certain areas in the city that I personally think should be designated as those fire hazard zones. The only ones that we have are identified by the state, and they're the ones that set up the criteria for it. But I think we were talking about being a little more proactive and possibly identifying other areas in the community that may now qualify. In specific, I was talking about the woods. Okay.
What would you do with that information?
It's part of the criteria for what you do in the area as far as how you're going to be developing the area.
Oh, so more regulations?
Yes.
Oh, love that.
Well, no. When your house burns down or if you start a fire in that area, it's
well, but isn't it?
It's precautionary is what it is.
But it's mainly developed.
There's just how you want to look at it. Okay, we're going to be into redevelopment, activity rather than development activity, because you have areas that have a high density of forestry now, and you have properties that are going in. The nature and the type of change that's going into that area may necessitate that you look at it differently. It's how many units do you put in a forested area, for fire protection. I will guarantee you that we are far heavier, densely, done in the woods area, in particular. If the fire starts in an area, I personally have always had a very big concern with regard to that. We don't have any opportunity to dictate what we want, but I would like to be able to have the ability to identify and make suggestions that maybe consideration be given.
With that, again, I mentioned OCFA has a number of situational plans prepared, and they've actually done extensive research on the eucalyptus forest. They've even had personnel travel to Australia to meet with other people that have similar vegetation, and so they very much understand how eucalyptus burns, what the all kinds of parameters. And so again, we get this information from the state, all cities do, and we sit down with Orange County Fire Authority and we go through these plans in incredible detail. So I think the way the program is set up is to allow the experts to make those determinations, because when it comes down to it, it's very true that if you are in a very high fire hazard zone as identified by the state, there's certain building materials that can be used, say for your patio covers. There's also different things in the fire code. But as the codes, as codes evolve, we're seeing more and more of those regulations apply to everyone. So it may not, those types of concerns may be being addressed at the current time just with new building codes, because they're always more strict, and we're seeing a lot of changes in the fire code. I'm sure when we do our code adoption again in about 12 months from now, we're going to see all kinds of things about eaves and spark arresters, and because we're seeing global climatic changes that are causing us to rethink how we build anywhere. It doesn't need to be in a eucalyptus forest. But the other side of the equation is always, it sets a lot of insurance standards, and so allowing people, there's two sides of that, to have lay people deciding what should and shouldn't be in a fire hazard area based on how they feel about the area. I really have to stress that we really work closely with OCFA and other cities, and every city is scrutinizing these areas. There were cities that came out with 75% of their city in the very high fire hazard severity zone. So we work with the experts, and next time we go through the adoption process and the state releases new maps, maybe there's an opportunity to have presentations before the Planning Commission, so that you can feel more involved. But there's a lot of scrutiny, parcel by parcel, and we comment, we get out aerials, we, this has changed, this area has been developed, this vegetation's no longer here, so it's a very detailed planning effort that goes into that.
I just want to add, with the upcoming general plan, there's an element as a part of that plan that addresses that.
Yes, and the state has changed the requirements, and that's why it's being required to be addressed in your general plan. So those are all things that are being done, but I would caution allowing individual cities to go beyond what the fire authority, what the fire in the state, what they're identifying with their criteria. If Lake Forest has criteria that no one else is using, it could be difficult.
I got shot down the other night, too, so
Well,
I'm used to it.
just
But I
so-
didn't give up. I didn't give up. I actually fought back against
No, but I think part of it is information, and we
It
did.
is,
We
it is.
we do that when we don't involve the Planning Commission, and so you're not aware that staffs attended 15 meetings, and cities really strongly participated, and we had, our own fire liaison that worked with us, and we did. We commented on that on a parcel-by-parcel basis.
I really, just to hammer this thing home again, with the climate change and things of that nature, I just like to know what the fire assessment is in Lake Forest. Overall. I mean, I don't know whether we need to have a presentation from the fire authority or something of that nature, but we do have areas in Lake Forest that we have a high propensity or probability of fire. And I can think of both the creek beds, the woods, the Foothill Ranch, and Portola in particular, 5 areas. And I just, would be comforted to have a fire authority come in and maybe squelch my concerns, because I just hate to think of a fire ever starting in one of our creek beds. I just don't know how it's going to be controlled. I just don't.
I believe that information exists. I know projects I've worked on, we had to determine what fire zone we were in, and also I know that the insurance companies have maps that indicate what those fire zones are. So that's something that's been known for a long time. I think maybe we could dig
I'd
it
like to
up.
have a presentation of it.
But I'm left with the thought that it makes a lot of sense to rely on the experts than to try to sort of invent that ourselves. We have the general plan coming up. There's an element, or actually a combination of elements, where we could address that.
I'll look into a presentation by Fire Authority. We'll see if we could do that, but it would be informational in nature.
That's what I'm asking for. is
And I think we have that, and not only, as you mentioned, those areas, but for example, any of the areas that abut any natural open space, we all have extensive fuel modification plans. So they hire a whole group of experts who do nothing but design fuel modification areas. They've got 5 separate zones and different vegetation that's allowed, and they're inspected by the fire authority. So there's a lot of things that take place just on an annual basis, to ensure that those areas are there, that they're maintained in the way they're meant to be. And in the past, when we had the Santiago fire, we lost very few patio covers in Portola Hills, and the fire actually burned all the way down to Glen Ranch Road.
Maybe if there's some sort of report that's on file, you could send that to Commissioner Carter to alleviate his
I would
concerns.
appreciate it.
That would be great.
More knowledge is always better than no knowledge.
Great.
Well, I think we're
Anybody
getting ahead of ourselves, but one of the serious areas for consideration is fire in mobile home parks, more so than the woods, because those units are right next to each other, and some of them are 30 years old or such, and they were approved in the county when requirements for fire hydrants were very lax. And so I think all three of our mobile home parks may have an inadequate amount of fire hydrants. Just a thought.
Well, mobile home parks are approved by the city. It's a little bit, we have a little different regulatory authority there. But yes, mobile homes are primarily constructed out of wood, the older ones, and they are very, very closely spaced.
Anything else?
If I could just suggest, since when you're going to report, one of the things is maybe give our chairman any input on what you think was significant contributions that you made. And I know we've talked in the past, you spent part of your time as the Planning and Traffic Commission and did work with staff and the Public Works staff on some worthwhile improvements in several of the neighborhoods. So you might want to highlight some of the work that you did on those particular neighborhoods.
Because these were, now, the ones that are listed in addition to, or we just expound on the one?
No, I think what the council, it's up to you. We provide you with a list of everything you've done over the course of the last year. And so what we're seeking will help craft some words for the chairman, what you feel was most significant. Instead of just a list of, we did, some signage and some minor improvements. I mean, what do you feel were your best contributions?
When Dave was here with the traffic studies and things of that nature, I think some of the issues that we were actually able to talk about, were extremely valuable to those who were in attendance at those meetings. I think we did modify a couple of perceptions of what we are able to do. And I learned a lot more about what he's able to do on his own, where you could take initiative and, get something taken care of before it comes to us. So personally, I found that very valuable.
And I would agree with that, and I don't know how we could tactfully say this, but I think that we spent a lot of time as the Planning and Traffic Commission to come up with some guidelines and some kind of rules and regulations as to how we deal with permit parking. And it's my understanding, and you, Gail, you probably know more about it, but there are particular standards that we set, and then I'm not sure if it was the new Traffic Commission or if it was our City Council that allowed permit parking for streets that did not meet the standards that we had studied, talked about a lot, determined that would be the best for our city, and then just somebody said, oh, let's make an exception. And I think we ought to say to the City Council, you gave us this task. We spent a lot of time. We spent a lot of your staff's time to learn about it. We came up with a plan, and then you just blew us off. And I'm sure blew us off is probably not the words we want to use. And I'm glad that Mark's doing it this year. But I'd like to include that.
I think it's of value. I really do. I think we added a lot to what the discussion is now with regard to the Traffic Commission, what it's supposed to be doing. But it as you say, it would lift it out of our purview and got placed someplace else. So.
And it's not that what we did was, perfect or the right thing, but if you ask somebody to do it, then follow it or go back and change it. Just don't randomly say, oh, well, for you, we're going to make an exception. That's not a good precedent.
But I do think, though, that the experience we had with doing the traffic portion of it was very helpful as we look at new developments in terms of how we deal with the permit parking, how we deal with parking in the development and on the streets that surround it, how we deal with, multifamily units backed up next to a single family, situation. I think based on, because of especially the time that we spent analyzing Bennett Ranch. I mean, Bennett Ranch is probably the poster child for permit parking in Lake Forest. And I think we learned a lot about how that worked and how, if we were going to look at developments going forward, how we might try and convince the developers, well, maybe if you tweak this or tweak that a little bit, that reduces the need for some of this stuff to happen. Or, they understand better how to deal with the parking within their own development. I think, probably we won't see a whole lot more of those because we've already developed most of it, but I think Nicosia will probably be the next place where we'll see that. There's a lot of discussion in the community about Nicosia. And I think that's something we're going to have to look at going forward as to how we, as a planning commission, would look at Nicosia and how we would approach that development and how that works. Because, I mean, the Nicosia brothers have a right to sell their property whoever they want, but I do think the city has something to say about how it gets used, and I think that's going to be how we do that in a tactful, productive way, I think is going to have a lot to do with how that goes forward.
I think that we need to help Mark here, though, with getting back to reporting on what his report gives to the city council. So what do we want for next year in addition to what we did? Is there anything? I mean, yeah, we've learned a lot, and a couple more skills, but for one, I'd like to just say, if you give us a task, you might want to stick with it. Dave, you had said that you wanted to keep the option open for additional times to come to the city council. So that would be another part of Mark's report. Do we agree on that?
Specify that again. What?
Right now, the only opportunity we have is annually to come forward with suggestions of things to consider. What we did last year, when we made the presentation, we requested that if something were to come up in that year period of time, that we didn't want to wait for a full year before we could put it on our ballot. If something comes forward, we'd like to have the opportunity to bring it forward to the council for consideration. Don't want to wait for a year.
Like, for example, I mean, what?
Well,
I can't think of something that come up.
The example was when we had the traffic commission is we were dealing with the permit parking, and the city had said, this council said this, and we said, well, no, maybe we want to do this, but we had to tell that poor gentleman, come back in 11 and a half months and we can maybe have an answer for you, because we weren't talking to the city council but once a year.
Right.
And we still really can't talk to the city council but once a year. So I think we ought to throw that back on the list.
Yeah.
So maybe consider a quarterly, although if we don't have anything, we're not obligated to do
Right.
that, but just have a quarterly
The availability.
availability should we have something come up that we need to present. Because sometimes, and again, I'll lose the example of somebody has something, was, well, we can only report, once a year, come back in 11 months. So have the ability to have that set aside, and if we need to, we will. If not, we won't. Okay.
So that's 2. Anything else? Come on, Robert.
Unpopular ones?
What?
Unpopular. If it were me, I would ask the city council to rethink the role of the planning commission in the city. Right now, in the development train, we're not the engine, we're the caboose. And I think there should be a greater effort on the part of the planning commission to actually get involved in the decisions that are being made, as opposed to reviewing the documents and saying yes, or vote yes or vote no. This is one city that the role of this plan commission is, in my opinion, unusual, in that we're sort of a little side group over here that really have no discussion. I mean, our participation in the general plan has been very limited. We didn't even get to look at the proposed plan for the Civic Center. There's just a lot of things that, in my role, you have current planning and forward planning, and we've done nothing but current planning and no forward planning. In my mind, I would like the council to reconsider the role of the planning commission.
Robert, I can understand where you're coming from because that was your profession. But I would ask Gail and our city attorney if they find that different in other cities. But if you were to, I think what the beauty of the Planning Commission is, we have professionals that the city hires to work out all the nuts and bolts, and then it comes here, and this is just a voice of the community to, you probably are thinking rubber stamp it, but I don't think we always rubber stamp it. But I'm not a professional in the planning, and I don't think that that all commissioners should be professionals. I think it's great that you are, or you were, but that to me is not the role of the Planning Commission.
And, I'm going to go right in between the two of you. What we did previously in trying to, identify like what Robert's talking about, because we always have been, a reactionary entity in that you're planning something that's 99% of it's approved before it's done and it comes to here. And that's why we took the initiative to do the design guidelines. The design guidelines citywide, and to identify them citywide, was done expressly to get us involved in the front end of that process. Okay? And that has been now integrated into when new developments are coming through, those design guidelines at least are brought into consideration. There was a couple other items similar to that by the retaining walls, by our going through and getting a design guideline for retaining walls, okay, interjected us into the design concept rather than the approval. And there may be other items like that that we may want to come up with. Here's one that I still think would be a good thing from a planning perspective. And it's too late, we can't do it. Because when we have concave, convex curves in an area that's got hills in it, there's some considerations that the guidelines could be established by the Planning Commission for consideration when you're looking at those. Because right now it's just line of sight. And what occurs, and I'll give you an example of Pittsford, okay, when the Arbor Apartments decided to start charging their people for their extra vehicle parking space, it all just flooded out onto Pittsford. The major impact that hit that community or in that area was we had not had no parking on the intersections, okay, where you had the rest of those streets coming out onto Pittsford. People just parked right up to the curb. I mean, they came right up to the curb. The line of sight was lost. And I think that's, if we had a planning consideration that when you consider a line of sight at development, that should be no parking specified. Because as soon as somebody encroaches on that line of sight, you have a safety issue.
If I could just help facilitate the conversation here, I think Commissioner Carter has a lot of examples that occurred before Commissioner De Almeida was on the commission. So our planning is always changing. We're always in flux. But I think that is a good example of what the commission did. The commission saw the need for retaining wall design guidelines, or saw an issue with retaining walls. They brought it up. We went to the council, and then we as staff hired design experts to come in. We took the Planning Commission on numerous field trips. We examined walls. We looked at it, and eventually reviewed a document prepared by a professional landscape architect to deal with retaining walls. And so I think that's a good way to do it. We look for you, the design guidelines, the citywide design guidelines, the area design guidelines. That was something brought up by the Planning Commission, the El Toro Road design guidelines. So we look for the commission to say, these would be good things, and then we go to the council, we get appropriation, we get money to do that, because we really don't have an advanced planning staff here at the city either. We have enough people to respond to the applications that are being filed. And so once we have the funding, and the council's been very good about allowing us to include things in our budget, and then we go out and do that. I think another example of how we've done it in the past, and it does precede your joining the commission, is we've made every effort to bring master plan communities to you way at the beginning planning stages. So when we had Portola and Shea Baker and Serrano Summit, same thing. We got a bus. We did it recently for Nikasi to take the planning commission and to go out to the site and get an introduction to it and to hear from an applicant and just hear some of their conceptual ideas so that the planning commission can throw out ideas. But I don't think, we actually have in the municipal code, it says the role of the planning commission. So it's already been specified as to what the role of the planning commission and what the role of the community services commission is.
I'm just going to throw this out because I think it's, and we're probably getting so far ahead of where we're at and need to be, but part of our parking criteria is based on rules established 30, 40 years ago. And when we look at development as far as residential or apartment developments and things of that nature, I think the parking information that we're relying on is outdated, at least the philosophical aspect with regard to it. The family now, where it used to be dependent upon a single vehicle, went to two. Now, with the age that we're in, I don't think there's any family that doesn't have 3, possibly 4 vehicles. And for us to still be relying on a parking criteria that is based on 2 cars per family, okay, does us a disservice. I'm really would like to, come up with some way to where we can get involved with modifying those parking criterias that are established for multi-tenant and higher density development. Because we're going to have to, at some point in time, if we're going to go up, we got to go down.
Well, so could we add that, if we agree, and if you think it's viable, that we'd like to do a parking study? Now, I know we have a parking planning, parking and traffic commission, but I think where Dave's coming is that, but we approve the developments or the businesses that come, and we say, okay, you need X amount of spots to park it. So is there a new study we could do?
Well, we actually tried something like that several years ago, and I have to tell you, this will be my opinion, it's incredibly problematic. You have a city that's 99% built out, and you're talking about changing the parking standards and literally rendering every single development in town non-conforming use. It's not going to solve a problem. You can say you want 3 parking spaces or a triple car garage. It's already built. But what you do have in your code right now, you have some tools, and it says these parking standards are the minimums. If the decision maker feels additional parking is warranted, they can require additional parking. So you have that. So there's a way to look at parking. You could request a certain study of an applicant, but to go in and change existing parking standards in a built-out community, we found to be very problematic, hugely disruptive, and it will never accomplish what you're set out to. And for those, I know the Chairman Armando was with us at the Planning Officials Forum. On top of that, we see this how economics are causing more people to live in more cars, but yet we're right on the cusp of this driverless car and the changes that could well be here. So maintaining flexibility, I think, is really where we want to be. And we have, commercial centers like the Foothill Town Center that we've all been saying, my gosh, there's like twice as much parking than could ever be. So it's more specific to the uses and the location, and just changing your standards, I don't think will get us where we want to be.
No, I wasn't talking about changing the standard, because I don't want to go back in and change the parking criteria on existing, okay? But I've got a feeling that the parking criteria we have and we're relying on for future development, okay, is inadequate. It does not address the current situation, okay?
Well, but part of the problem you have is that we're building housing developments now with higher density.
Correct.
And higher density of, we're packing more people in less area.
And that doesn't necessarily impact your current physical development that you've got, okay? It's something new. I mean, if we're looking at the potential, and at some point in time, it's going to happen, density is going to become, the criteria, okay? You put 10,000 people where you used to put 100,000, or, whatever. So many people, more people in a given space, the criteria has got to change on the evaluation of that, okay? We can't always rely on having a parking lot, for strip malls. At some point in time, you have to become real and say, okay, fine, it's going to go to a higher density, and we got to do something that actually works with regard to the parking criteria for that. And as that necessitates that if we're going with let's put another hotel somewhere, okay? Okay, the parking may be inadequate. It may have to go down. We may not be able to allow it to go out onto the street. We have to say, no, you cannot put that building there unless you put a parking structure either on it or under it.
Well, the classic example of that was Gateway Center.
That's Gateway Center is a perfect example.
It's a perfect example of that. We did have some influence on that one.
Right, and that's a good thing that we did. But those have become probably more common. Okay.
Right, and so again, it gets back to having the flexibility, and our code allows us to do that. What we found with the hotels was very interesting, because what we found was our hotel parking requirement, they felt was excessive, and they're finding that 80% of the people coming from the airport to the hotels are using Uber. So coming up with new criteria, I think having the ability to react and respond to situations, whether the hotel is urban in nature, it's located by the freeway, where it is, a standard will never fit all, and our code right now is set up to allow us to assess individual situations, and we just need to use that.
Well, but I think that comes back to our role as a planning commission, is to look at those on an individual basis and decide which way does it go. I mean, we never really talked about, when we approved all those hotels, we never really discussed the issue, how many of them were showing up in an Uber car.
Oh, no, that was in all the parking studies, because they were requesting a lower parking ratio than what we had. And they had extensive studies. They're hotel people, and they gathered this information. They knew exactly what time people were coming and when they checked out. And so everything changes. All industries change, and our transportation options are changing. And so my point just being, it's very difficult to set a new standard, but we can have a policy that we assess projects on an individual basis, and we have that in our code. We need to use that and make sure that we focus on these types of topical areas within our developments and make sure we've covered them for each situation.
Yeah, about 4 years ago, the staff proposed a parking ordinance, and I remember talking about it. And of all the projects I have reviewed when I've been here, at the commission, the parking is more than adequate. I think the thing that has disturbed us is that there's old projects that were approved that had inadequate parking. I would say that the solutions that are being proposed on these new developments are very adequate. It's, in some cases you got space for 4 cars.
Right. The other thing we've done, we recently sent out a letter. So I think that's an excellent point. We're getting a lot of problems in built-out areas and where things appear to be changing. We recently sent out a letter to all the tenants in apartments and to all the apartment managers letting them know you cannot lease code-required parking spaces. So if that's going on, please let us know. And that can't be. And we've, found so many interesting things on a case-by-case basis. We have an apartment complex, and it turns out that people in a nearby condo complex in Mission Viejo are parking inside this complex and traveling through a system of trails through an open space area to get back to Mission Viejo. That's crazy. We wouldn't have known that. We recently found an apartment complex that started enforcing parking within their community and red curbing within their own community, and that caused a spillover out onto the street. So again, we have a in-house parking management committee, and we meet and discuss these things. We have, police or the sheriff's involved, just all kinds of people studying these issues, but every situation is different. That's the one thing we know.
And to piggyback on what Gail was saying at this planning officials forum, which not in the too near future, we're talking about driverless cars, and we're talking about people would not own cars. They would type in and it would come within a couple minutes, take them to their destination and drop them off, and we're talking about going to the store, going to wherever. So I think addressing parking, whatever, in the not too near future, that's going to be, that's going to be...
Right, and that's one of the keys for the city's general plan, and that's because we don't know, technology moves so fast now, so the policies that we include in the general plan are going to all center around that flexibility and being able to react in the future, because we can't write a plan that lasts us to 2040, because we don't really know, but we can write a plan that allows us flexibility and the ability to respond to changes in technology and advances. And I think that's kind of how we see this going in the future.
Is there anything the commission can do, okay, to assist staff in rectifying, like, the situations you're talking about, that you're not aware of them, okay, unless somebody points them out? There's got to be some way where, we know something's going on, okay, and we can't get to the heart of it. And I don't know if there's something, that the commission can do to help.
We have, this is where we're getting a lot of our information, is the new Ask Lake Forest, or what do we call it now? Is it still ALF? It's still called ALF. So this is all you do. You see something, you pick up your phone, you send an ALF ticket, you take a picture of it. Okay. So that's a manner in which we're getting an amazing number of tickets. We call them tickets, issues that are identified by people in the community, whether it's trees that are uprooting the sidewalk, or trash overflowing, or a bus shelter in disrepair. So people are taking those kinds of pictures, and we get it. And like I said, we found that really the best way to deal with it is a multidisciplinary committee, and we have people from management services, we have police services, we have code enforcement, and you've met Doug Anderson from some of the traffic stuff, Dave Rogers. I mean, people will go out and talk. We're actually we're meeting at an apartment complex next Wednesday with another attorney and a property manager. So we're out there doing everything we can. But if you see something or you're aware of something, use the Ask Lake Forest system.
All right, so maybe we can move on from this. So the two that I have are the Hometown Heroes, in addition to the stuff that's printed, and the ability to maybe once a quarter, if we need to, address the city council about a pertinent issue that's come up, whatever. Is there anything else that we really need to address that you think?
Well, I think
my other one was that I said before, I guess there's three now because you added Hometown Heroes, is that we set policy and city council upset policy with regards to the parking, permit parking.
Yeah, but that's already been done and whatever. I don't know personally what that would accomplish. I'm going to lambaste the city council because they shouldn't have.
Well, you have to. I'm not going to. So that's.
Yeah, but I'm just saying I don't know what that would accomplish.
I did have one comment, though. I think
that has happened more.
Yeah, it's wrong.
Than
like ask us to do something and then you undo it.
Not an exceptional number of times, but I can think of a couple of situations that things got reversed or.
Well, we do have a new city council coming in, so I'm just going to say maybe things might be different.
I would like to go back to the accomplishments for just a minute, because I think the work that we did with the residents for Portola Hills when Baldwin Company came in with all the changes that they wanted to make, I think we did fulfill our purpose there because we provided the public forum for them to come in and talk about it and discuss it and to have their say. And I think a lot of what we do as a planning commission is just we provide the public forum for people to come in and tell us really what they want, or what they like, or what they don't like, or what's working, what's not working. And part of this information that I think is going back, to Gail and the staff is coming from what we get from these people when they come to the meeting, when we ask them questions and we try and get information on that. Obviously the city council has the last vote in it. But I think if we're doing our job as a fact-finding group, which is really a lot of what we do, if we're finding out those facts and we're presenting the right findings, then I think hopefully when things move on through the system, people end up with the right answers and the right things get done. I think that's a lot of what our function is to do findings, to get information, and to create an environment where people feel comfortable in coming in and saying what they feel. I mean, if we're doing that and we're inviting them and they feel like we're inviting them and we're interested in what they say, then I think we get a lot of information that's very useful and that works both for the staff and the city council.
I was hoping to go home early. It's hard for me to think of what the Planning Commission accomplished in the past year, because really it's the staff that accomplished it. And it isn't like we did anything. It's like we're kind of like stewards for the actions that the staff did, and the staff has done it. It's hard for me to think that the Planning Commission did it. It was the staff that did it, from engineering and development and planning and whatever. And you guys have done a good job. I don't see that we did anything other than say, gee, that's a good idea. And we were presented with a lot of good ideas. And that's my thoughts.
Okay. Giving perspective to that, we do a lot by reviewing and commenting and things. So that's why it's so important that we sit up here and comment, because staff takes back to their daily activity the expectations that this board sets. And that's why I think it's so imperative that when we have items come before us, that we discuss issues that are there. Now, the reason why so many of them come through and there's no questions is because we've done in the past, we've got them conditioned to present it to us in the way we want to see it.
Like the alcohol.
Yes.
I mean,
that's a perfect example.
5-6 years ago, that was just the craziest thing that would come before us, and now we've got policy, and there's no discussion.
And it was based on the conversation that we had here at the dais of what we like, what we don't like. And like I say, if we set our standards high and this group holds those standards, the next group that comes along, when they come through things, they know what to expect, what our reaction is going to be. We haven't had many major issues because the majority of those things that used to come to us that were, oh my God, we used to have conversations and discussions that were just endless. But staff emulates and actually produces the result that we're looking to have. And I think that's the value of the commission, okay, is that we give them the sounding board. And Tom, you were correct. We're giving them the sounding board. The stuff that is discussed here becomes part of their daily routine. So the next person that comes through with an application says, that was a hot button. Let's address this a little bit differently, or bring it to the commission to where it's not confrontational. We've already worked through 90% of the problem, so we don't have to be up here trying to plan. And that's what we used to do a lot of times. Sometimes in our conditions we put in there, we are actually redesigning the project here at the commission level, which is not what we're supposed to do.
And I would just say that's exactly correct. We meet with all the applicants, and we convey, this was an issue, our commission is concerned about this particular thing, this is a hot button for the commission, here are things that they've approved, here's what they had to say. So that is true, that's how it works, and the applicants are smart enough to know they're coming before the planning commission, and we're not telling the applicants, this is my idea, I want you to change this. So it does work that way, and it has worked very well for us.
Yeah, I can recall back where we did have a couple of applicants come through and say, well, I'm going to tell you how this has got to be done. And you talk about something that would rile the commission up, just, like, okay, fine, you want to take that particular stance, you haven't got a chance with this commission. And we take it back to staff, and, that does not occur anymore, where, mostly things that are brought to the commission are brought in a form that were readily acceptable to.
And I think, too, a lot of times people bring concerns to us, and we'll, yeah, that's a good idea, and then we have staff look into it, and, you know, I think they've made some changes in the past based on stuff that people, so we're not so set on stuff. We hear what people have to say, and then if it sounds like a good idea, we'll look into it and let staff take care of doing their job, so. All right, are we good on that? We're good. I think we are.
I like my idea.
Okay. Well, I love your idea. I'm just not going to say it. Thanks. So, do we have any of the director's comments?
I have no additional comments. Sorry for providing you with so much input, but I think it was productive discussion, and we'll write that up for you, so you'll be set to go.
Maybe we'll get together before that. And
Absolutely.
Great. City Attorney?
No comment.
Thank you. How about comments from?
I'd like to at least one time have a comment from the attorney. At least once. You know, we can't be doing that good of a job that she has no comment.
Do everything right, and she won't have a
Do it
problem.
all right.
That would be my only comment. You guys are doing great, which is why I have no comment.
Thank you. Thank you. I have no comment.
No comment tonight.
And thanks, everybody, for your help this past year. Maybe I was always joke around, but maybe by the last meeting I'll get all the specifics down on how everything goes, you know, so whatever it is. So that's basically no comment. Record. Robert, you get?
Yeah, I did, and I forgot it.
You're not on.
Staff's done a great job. I'm happy with that.
Okay, then I will adjourn the meeting until the next regularly scheduled meeting on December 13th.